Hello, personal productivity enthusiasts and community. Welcome to Anything But Idle, the Productivity News Podcast. Today's show is brought to you by Co-working Space by Personal Productivity Club. I'm Ray Sidney Smith.
And I'm Augusto Binot.
And we're your hosts for Anything But Idle. This is episode 61. We're recording this on May 24th, and we're calling it Google I/O 2021 Conference Commentary, or commentary on the Google I/O 2021 conference. So welcome everybody, and we are going to, in lieu of our normal covering all of the stories we cover each week in the productivity and technology news space, we're going to actually just do Monday morning quarterbacking of the I/O conference today. And to do that, we have brought Art Gelwicks to join us to do that show. And so Art Gelwicks is a productivity and collaboration consultant. He's a blogger at theideapump.com. So you should check out theideapump.com. He's also the host of the Being Productive podcast, as well as he joins us on Productivity Cast each week. And so welcome to Anything But Idle.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Pretty good, Art. Pretty good. So,
ready for some Google goodness?
This is a pretty in-depth Google I/O. I think 2020 was a little light because of the pandemic and supply chain issues and just the general chaos around everybody working from home and so on and so forth. This time around, they chose to do a hybrid event where they had people joining virtually, but they had some people on site for the keynote to be physically there. And so what were your initial reactions to Google I/O, to the conference, to the keynote, and to the sessions?
Well, unfortunately, I missed out on watching the actual session, so I'm going back to watch those. But based on everything I've seen, it's being at the wrong end of the fire hose in this case. I mean, there is just a flood of different things. But nothing that I'm seeing is singularly earth-shaking. I mean, there's lots of things that we were hoping for that have come about. Some things that may change an environment significantly. Some that re-cement Google's playing in a particular space. But I think across the board, I'd agree with you. It felt like a catch-up kind of event. All the things that they were ready to talk about and weren't able to, they've got all of it lumped together. So if you boil it down into things like Android 12 and Wear OS and Smart Canvas and Material U and all of these different things, unlike some of the other events we've talked about, it didn't seem to have a singular theme to it, which is fairly common within I/O. I/O's, it's developer stuff in most cases. So it's good to see where this stuff's going, but finding that common thread is the normal challenge, and it has lived up to that normal challenge.
Yeah, I think that with the advent of just the breadth of which Google I/O is trying to cover, one of the things that I found to be quite useful is to look at what they're talking to developers about, because they know that the press is watching, but this is really the developer conference, as you noted, Art. And what they were saying to the developers was also a little bit about what they were saying to businesses and consumers, really saying to there's enterprise, small business, and consumers. They're talking to those three groups of people in I/O, notwithstanding the developers. Most of the keynote is for that. And the sessions, of course, are not watched by the general public. They're for geeks like us. And so they are really not. So when you get to the sessions, that's where some of the meat and potatoes of what's going on that I really found quite fascinating to see how they were putting that together. I think some of them could have done a little bit better with the reading off of the teleprompter stuff. Some of them were just reading directly off of a script, and the sessions just weren't as convincing, weren't as, I don't know, they were just boring. And so I wish they didn't have as much of that, but they were still useful. I mean, the information was conveyed that they have a lot of really intricate, cool stuff coming down the pike. And so let's kick into where Sundar Pichai, who's the CEO of Google, really started off, which was, for him, he thinks that the future is Lambda, and that stands for the language model for dialogue applications. And so then he had a conversation, or he demonstrated his team having a conversation with the planet Pluto and with the paper airplane. Also, to what I believe to be really boring parts of the keynote, but a remarkable movement, though. This is the successor to BERT and GPT-3. In essence, this is bringing more natural language to the idea of having conversation with, in essence, a computer with the servers. And so Lambda is this ability for you to take open domain. What they mean by open domain is that many different areas of knowledge, and being able to slice that together to have a realistic conversation. Humans use all kinds of language that doesn't mean what it says. And so, like, we could say, oh, really? That has a different implication than the literal words, oh, really? So the idea here is that it's capable of understanding that kind of language and continuing conversation. And so I thought the demonstration was not as great as it could have been. They could have chosen much better examples than a paper airplane. I thought Pluto was kind of interesting, but again, this notion that we're having dialogue with inanimate objects are also kind of beside the point. Like, from my perspective, the way in which they demonstrated duplex last year, and the use of the technology in a small business environment where you call a business and this AI is talking to you and capable of taking a reservation or booking an appointment, those kinds of things. This is where Lambda is going to take over and be really powerful. And so why didn't they just show a real life experience of saying, okay, this is what we experienced in the business space, and now let's take it to that next level and have a real rich experience that's going to really creepily but accurately convey a human, where a human will not even know that the computer is helping them with a workflow, right? Which is, right. You call into these, these call lines, and it asks you questions, your name and account number and so on and so forth. This is where this technology is going to be its most useful, because, calling into those customer support lines and, navigating those phone trees, you might as well want to poke your eyeballs out with pins. Having a real life-like conversation is just a nicer way to be able to facilitate that. So that's where this technology, I feel like, has the most applicability. Thoughts?
It's definitely an early stage type of demonstration of the concept. But when you start to put it in some practical terms, I can see where they're going with this. I mean, this is not Google Assistant level 2. That's not this. This is Google Assistant like level 5. But when you start to take it, for example, the call center context, most call center structures, especially if they're starting to leverage AI technologies for non-voice based and even voice based in some cases, where they're doing knowledge interaction with an established system like a ServiceNow, they need the ability to adapt to the conversation and adapt to the idiosyncrasies of human questioning. This type of a technology makes that much more viable, because it puts the load for finding the right information on the knowledge engine on the front, rather than on the data store in the back, where you have to provide so many different permutations. In this case, you could have one right answer and have the AI system find its way to that right answer. The other thing that I think is interesting about that, we talk about this interacting with the devices, and the paper airplane one intrigued me a little bit, because I can see this going down the path of IoT. I can see smart devices that are on their own smart. So, for example, being able to, instead of having to go through your Google Assistant or whatever, you can go through directly to your air conditioner. You can go over to your air conditioner and say, set the room temperature to 75 degrees. And that's built into the system, connected through Wi-Fi in the background, and it decentralizes that requirement. It also provides a greater targeted user experience, if you want to think of it that way. Because if I'm talking directly to an air conditioner, there's a limited number of things I'm going to be wanting to ask it. I mean, I'm not going to want to know what the latest Manchester United football score was. Doesn't matter. The air conditioner is not supposed to know that. But if I have a home assistant, yeah, that may be part of its purview. So it allows me to target that a little bit better. This is definitely down the path. I put this in the same type of bucket as when they demonstrate quantum computing. This is a get the developers fired up on, wow, we're doing really cool, innovative stuff. And now we're going to talk about the stuff that we're actually going to do.
And they have to prepare themselves for a post-advertising income world, right? They know advertising revenue is going to eventually not be their primary source of income, and it pays them billions and billions of dollars a year right now. They need to supplant that somehow. And this technology, they're hoping they're gonna hit, jackpot on some new form factor for consuming the web, consuming technology generally, interacting with technology. The core, the underpinning for that technology, quantum computing, and the way in which we input output in some other way that leads to a greater monetization of that content on the web. Because quite honestly, they're doing a lot to circumvent or to be an intermediary to web publishers today. And so if I'm a blogger or if I'm a creator in some way, shape, or form, and Google indexes me and is basically providing no hit search results, they're just voicing to me the answer and not really giving me the traffic. Well, why should I contribute content to the index? This really creates a challenge for the entire ecosystem that was once founded on being supported by bringing people to your website.
But it does flip the equation a bit, and that's when you do a voice-based search, you only want one answer, and that's the right one. You don't want pages of responses to go through. So controlling and defining what that right answer is that comes out of that voice-based search is a huge monetary opportunity for places like Google, because now can you buy that right answer? Can you buy and pay to be the right answer? Well, how is that determined, and what's the engine that goes behind that, and how can you demonstrate that applies? Through clicks, it's easy enough to show that kind of ad revenue. Through voice searches, it's a little bit different. There's advertisers aren't that savvy yet, so you're going back to a situation almost where it's like radio on steroids. People are asking questions and listening to specific things. Or it's actually more like podcasting, of all things. How do you, advertise within the podcast itself around a keyword? Could you tie these together so that during a podcast playback, a Lambda-based engine is then monitoring the playback and providing you advertising that is tied to the audio track of the podcast on the fly? Those are the types of things that I could see this technology being woven into by Google to, you're right, maintain their revenue models, because advertising is going to change. I mean, it will always change. Some of this stuff's going to be around a long time, but it has to evolve if it's going to survive.
Yeah, and just the notion of sponsored content on a Google scale scares the bejesus out of me. Think of the political upheavals, the ability to buy elections. If people are just listening to answers that they're asking to a trusted source like Google, and it's being purchased by a dictator, or even just a dictator in training, which we here in the United States have already unfortunately had to experience. There's just all of those potential political ramifications there. I'm curious how they'll navigate that. I know they're aware. I know they understand that there's a clear bias when it comes to race and those kinds of issues in the machine learning algorithms. So it's all very interesting. I think, yes, we're nascent, very early on, but you definitely see the glimmers. These are little glimmers in their eye of what Google thinks it can build for the future, and that's really.
And it makes sense at that point in the presentation, because as a developer, I want to know where this is going to track 3, 5, 7 years. So I'm headed down the right path. I'm not going down a dead end route for my development work or my strategic work. Absolutely.
All right, let's move on to, I think, what was probably the next biggest item that Google announced, which was Smart Canvas. So that people have a little bit of background here, Smart Canvas is, those of you who are old enough to remember Google Google Wave. And so Google Wave was the ability to have a kind of a navigational, conversational document creation slash project collaboration tool. It was like all meshed together. And so the way in which they've decided to use Smart Canvas is in essence to be able to take things like docs, sheets, and slides and flip that. So the primary thing you're engaging with is the content, and the conversation then gets seamlessly integrated into that particular ecosystem. So you can think about like I'm editing a Google Docs document and I want to have a conversation with my team around that. I can now pull in Augusto and Art into the docs document, and now their video feed or audio feed is now in the document as we're having that conversation. So it really starts to blend together. You start to see this change in what's the platform you're using for the creation of the content, and it doesn't matter, because if I'm in Google Meet, I can bring you into the document. If I'm in the document, I can bring the Google Meet into the document. So it doesn't really make any difference. And that's kind of the point.
Yeah, this is the logical path that we've been headed on for the longest time. As we started moving most of our applications to the cloud, we've been able to eliminate the walls and the silos created by desktop level applications. You see that with Microsoft Fluid Framework. You're seeing that here with Smart Canvas. You have this ability. It's been around a long time. Windows used to have it with object linking and embedding. The same idea of turning content in any form into a modular type of structure and being able to integrate those pieces together. The lines are being blurred. And it just makes sense that Google has brought this as part of their offering because they have the tools, and the best part, they don't have a desktop legacy to deal with. Everything being browser-based puts them that much further down the path. They're not fighting that battle. So to me, it makes perfect sense. If you're bought into the Google ecosystem and you're using the Google Suite tools, this will provide you a huge number of capabilities. The only thing I found, and I'm taking this from the Microsoft side of the fence, is that this type of a tech usually has a fairly steep learning curve for effective adoption. Not so much doing it. It's not hard to drop the pieces in. But once you know how to drop the pieces in, what are you going to do with it then? And that's where most organizations either struggle or, as I've seen, fall flat on their face with trying to do this.
Yeah, and I think you made a great point in there on the adoption. It is how steep is going to be that learning curve. Because when you take things like Microsoft Teams, going to the Microsoft fence, okay, Microsoft Teams has an incredible amount of features where you can work, put the files, create the teams, create the folders. But the average Microsoft Teams user, that they don't even are aware that those can exist. So how Google is not exactly known for do this job. So how they're going to really get the people to see that. That said, I believe it's really powerful. Dropbox had a thing called Paper, I think what it's called, where you can basically do something similar to this one, use the link, attach the files. That was what came to my mind more than Google Wave when this came, and make it to a place where you can now start getting more into the real task collaboration process. That there are really not that many tools in the market. There is more and more organizations moving into this, leaving personal productivity aside, getting more into this collaboration, this most task management, and how Google is going to respond to this. This is a great place, if it survives, the time for Google to come and really make that task-based collaboration and productivity happen.
I think where we'll see the win on this right away, or earliest days, will be in the education space, because the natural inclination of students as content creators on other platforms will logically translate into this. I mean, they are much more multimedia focused. They are much more content derivative and consumption focused. So the classic Google Doc is very boring to them. The classic Google Slide is very boring to them. But to be able to integrate those together lends itself more to the way they're used to consuming content and also creating it. So I think the educational space will probably make this jump much faster than the corporate space, because again, corporate requires creativity. Unfortunately, 95% of corporations are not creative. So they go in and they do the same thing that they've always done time and time again. They may try it once or twice. You may see HR departments and training departments pick it up a little earlier, but I think it's going to have an extended curve to it to be able to get to that level of adoption. That said, like I said, this is the price of admission right now. You need to have these kinds of things if you're going to consider yourself having a complete suite of, I don't want to say productivity tools, but office tools.
Yeah, and I like the way in which they have decided to implement this in some way, shape, or form. They're using what are called smart chips, which allow you to go in and tag people throughout the ecosystem, and that gives you greater function. So you probably already have seen some of this if you use the commenting function in Google Docs or in Google Sheets or Google Slides. You can and then put someone's name, and it'll show their name or email address if you have it in your contacts. And then if you add them, you'll get a little checkbox below that, and it'll say, assign this to so-and-so. They're basically adding to that functionality directly inside of the documents and inside many of the other files within the system, so docs, tasks, and otherwise. And so this, I think, is going to be really nice. I mean, it would be nice that if you have a bunch of documents and people tag you with assignments, they now all get collated and put into your Google Tasks. So now you can see all of them, which is just really, really seamless and convenient.
You're hitting the thing that I was hoping you were going to hit on, which is there is an inherent problem with this. And I say that specifically because I've seen it happen on the Microsoft side. Being able to do the @ mentions is really great. I mean, you can flag people to do it. The problem is it becomes overwhelming quickly. And there's no centralized management of it. So if you are trying to project manage something or even task manage at a basic level, these things can spiral out of control rapidly. Everybody gets assigned to this or that and the other. There's no tracking of it. There's no follow-up. The mentions come through. Where was that? I don't know where that is now. And you wind up with this just complete cluster of activities and interactions that'll drive you bonkers. So developing an operational strategy around how do you use this? What's most effective? When don't you want to use it? What's the follow-up process and procedure? It really is money well spent to sit down with somebody who has worked with this kind of tech, maybe not necessarily just the Google one, but this type of technology, and talk to them about, well, how should a team most effectively collaborate within these kinds of tools? And what are the do's and the don'ts? And without doing that, you're going to bring this stuff on the line. You're going to use it, maybe a couple months of moderate success, and then it's going to fall by the wayside, and it'll be another lost implementation.
I don't know. I think more and more this is something that resonates more with younger generations, and this kind of collaboration, if they do it well and they integrate it well to Google Task, that could really make a difference from where they are, and you can click and come back. Being everything online in the browser, that will allows you to jump from one place to the other, and could make it really interesting. I think that with the addition of the checklist that you can create and then integrate all that, I think they can make something really interesting.
I don't disagree with you at all. I think there's a natural aptitude because it is familiar with, direct mentions in Twitter and @ mentioning someone. That bar to adoption is much lower at the user level. The problem is most decision makers are not that younger group. They're the older group within organizations, and unfortunately, they don't quite get it, so they don't lead the way they should to encourage this kind of adoption. It winds up having to be grassroots, which is very difficult to get centralized adherence. So I would love to see more organizations say, hey, there's new tools here. You guys get this. Show us how to use it. Unfortunately, most organizations don't want to relinquish that level of control internally.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So let's move on to a little bit more in terms of Chrome OS. So I/O launched a whole bunch of new features in the Chromebook and the Chrome OS space. And so what were some of the things that stood out for you in the Chromebook space?
Well, with me, the Chromebook space is always one of those intriguing ones because I hate to say it, it always feels like it's getting left behind. But not so much in this case. They have that natural extension. They're really pushing in the tablet space again. They're looking to start to leverage the higher end Chromebook devices and recognize that they have that functionality built into the system itself. Being able to have a tighter integration of the phone hub to your Chromebook and tying your photos in directly. Your web app menu applications, those being more tightly integrated, and the notification badges. It's about time that they start to clean up those notification badges. There's just basic things. One of the things you can tell right away that they've learned from this whole pandemic situation is the need for multi-monitor support. And sure enough, Chrome OS is going to be picking up multi-monitor support for web apps. That type of thing is really critical. Improved USB serial device support, and even stuff in the back end. They're compiling with what's called Sparkplug right now, which is a faster JavaScript compiler, which, unless you're a true geek, you're going to have no idea what that does, except you're going to notice that things go faster because all your JavaScript has to be compiled before it can be executed. So that type of a change within the operating system is going to make that perpetual commitment to the Chrome OS platform that much more integrated. I think we're going to continue to see this to be a viable computing platform. It is truly coming into its own. That, and they're taking, and we'll talk about this later on, but they're taking the Material You concept and they're bringing that to Chrome OS as well to give you more control over that canned environment and make it more personal. So I think there's a lot of nice potential. And I also love the fact that you get the update so fast. I mean, you don't have to wait until a carrier decides to release it.
Yeah, Android. Oh, goodness. That is such a problem. No, I wanted to underscore just two pieces here that you talked about that I think are going to underpin the future of Chrome OS. One is that web app link handling. Now you're able to actually have this highly rich experience when it comes to clicking on what is a PWA, a progressive web application. And so now you can open up an application in its own window. I use this quite often on my desktop, on the Windows and Mac OS desktop, in terms of utilizing applications. I don't want to install WhatsApp on anything ever. And so being able to get it in this progressive web app experience gives me a separate window. I get to utilize it on the desktop when I want to, and then I close it and it blips off the radar. Same thing with many other applications. You will see a little install icon. It looks like a little down arrow kind of inside of a square in the browser. When you're in Chrome and any other Chromium-based browser, you'll see that little icon. That means that you can actually pop that application you're in into its own window, and it becomes its own app, which is just incredibly helpful because you don't have to have a bunch of applications installed. So I'm really pleased with that. And then, of course, giving greater file system access. They're basically integrating the file system API so that now when you're in the browser, you can actually access file system applications securely and in this fluid way. Those two pieces there were really huge announcements because I think they're really trying to force through into more enterprise and more just like everyday consumers who saw the power of the Chrome OS platform during the pandemic because it was inexpensive and it just gave them an opportunity to utilize it for students and for families that needed to work remotely. But now they want to be able to say, yeah, but it can actually do so much more. Yeah, and I think that's the next phase.
Between last year and this year, I think that I can't remember the exact number, but it's Chromebook sales were like up over like 200% or some insane number. It's that type of thing that I think has reinvigorated Google's thinking about where this thing can actually go. I would not be surprised. I'll throw this out there. I would not be surprised if within the next year or two, we start to see progressive web apps be able to be installed on Android devices as if they were a regular application. I'm willing to put that out there that they're going to start going that. There's always been this talk of making Android-based Chromebooks and merging the two. I don't know that they'll merge, but I think we're going to see this start creeping the other direction because I think they're starting to really recognize that this is the alternative I mean, this is the third player. Windows, Mac, or iOS, and Chrome OS can all be, for all intents and purposes, be spoken of in the same conversation now. And up until this point, I don't think they could be.
But I think they're doing something really. They're playing the game really well, because they look into, okay, what people who are in this corporate environment think that their computer should do. Okay, and this is taken from Apple. Took Apple give access to the mouse for the iPad. How long? Why? There was no reason, okay, other than corporate stubbornness. If they will have give access to the mouse as they did now, people will have understood long time ago that they could work on this thing. Instead, they decide not to. Instead, I think Chromebook is doing this really well. Okay, I'm going to give you access to the file system so you don't need to understand what is on the back. I'm going to give you your multiple screen, your access to multiple monitor support, so you understand that this machine can work the same as your Windows. Most users don't know the back end. That's good. But they know I need a mouse, or they know I need multiple support. Giving that, it's giving now corporate two things. Okay, I'm giving you a machine that is as capable, but much cheaper. And it will do, your users will not complain that they cannot do the multiple support or multiple monitors. They will not complain that they cannot access their file systems and these things. So I think they're doing that really, really wisely.
Well, and something has played right into their hands with this too, and that was that Microsoft last week officially killed Windows 10X. So their lightweight Windows has gone by the wayside. Now they may go down some other path. You know, it's Microsoft. They always change depending on the wind blowing. But this is one of those situations where I think, looking at the devices, they're the only, Chrome OS is the only thing that plays in this price area. I mean, you're talking a massive machine for sub $600. Nothing. You're looking at tablets for anything else, or a bottom of the line notebook. So here you've got full powerful capability. I think that they're recognizing their player. And I think you're right about the corporate space too. Looking at the number of businesses that had to use VPN technology, use VDI technology, use virtual machines and that sort. Well, you can do all that through a Chromebook connection. And that means that when I ship out laptops or Chromebooks to people, I'm shipping out $200, $300 Chromebooks or $400 Chromebooks. I can do that we proved that could be done in the education space, because you look at the massive number of them that were bought by schools. Corporations are going, yeah, we could do that too. And that's a heck of a lot cheaper. And it's a lot easier to maintain.
Yeah. And Project Crostini, which is the Linux implementation on Chrome OS, is coming out of beta. They're coming out of becoming a stable part of the platform now, which means that for people who want to have that greater geekier side and install Linux-based applications, it's opening up that entire world and that entire ecosystem. You're going to need a beefier Chromebook than those lower end versions. But for kids learning coding, all of those things, being able to turn on Linux and be able to have access to that operating system inside of the Chromebook, I think is just a stellar angle for Google to play here, and really smart for the corporate space that wants access to those things on different form factors. It's not just about a Chromebook and a laptop experience. This is Chrome OS in many different devices being able to be utilized in many different form factors and for many different uses.
Well, and didn't Google buy, is it Cloud Ready? I can't think of their name right now. I'm drawing a blank.
Neverware is the name of the company. Cloud Ready is the product.
So and I think that's one of the things that people forget a lot, is that Chrome OS is the only thing that works on old machines as well as new. It allows you to maintain a hardware technology investment by a factor of 5 longer than any other operating system. I got an iPad sitting back here that I can't use because I can't get anything past iOS 12 loaded on it. So now I got a bunch of apps that won't even install. Well, Chrome OS, that's not an issue. I don't have that problem because their stuff supports forever now. Although I am going to have to upgrade my notebook, but that's a whole different thing.
But you see, that's what is interesting. if you convince the corporate, you don't even need to buy the hardware. You can now get the Neverware, put everybody on Chrome, everybody on that model, and make everybody run. That is a winning proposition for corporate to make that change. Yeah, you keep your cycle of machines, you don't need to change anything. All that you're going to do is come to these machines with that USB drive, install Neverware that now will give exactly the same Chrome experience. And any new machine you buy new Chromes, that is for corporate a massive proposition.
If I've got 10,000 workstations and I can go through and I can install Chrome OS and get rid of 10,000 Windows licenses, I kind of think that's paid for it. And I don't care if you're going to use Google's platform or Windows 360 or Microsoft 365 or whatever you're going to use, because I know the machines are going to work. Yeah, the machines will run. So,
and something that people don't realize is that Cloud Ready, or Neverware that is, has a bunch of other technologies behind the Cloud Ready concept. So Cloud Ready is not just for computing devices. We're talking about displays, like large billboard banner displays, point of sale. There are all kinds of use cases where you want to have digital displays and interactive displays, kiosks, and otherwise. And Cloud Ready was ready-made for that. They also have the healthcare and the HIPAA compliance and all the other electronic health records compliance technologies built into their system, so that they can actually get that stuff up to speed and up to scale in enterprise very quickly. That was why Google bought them. It wasn't so that you could turn your old home laptop into a ready-made machine. That was a byproduct. That was a benefit of it. And we'll see, hopefully Google Play Store come to the Cloud Ready platform on the Home Edition. That Enterprise Edition is really where the action's at for Google. Okay. We have reached our halfway point, or a little bit beyond it. I'm going to take a break, and then we'll come back to talk about Material You. We're going to talk about Android 12, and oh my God, the resurrection of Wear OS. So we will meet you after the break.
While working in person may be normal for you, it's unlikely your coworkers are as interested in being productive as you are. Or working remotely or from home can be isolating, and there's something powerful about being with productive people, even virtually, that helps you be more engaged. If a flavor of these sounds familiar, Co-working Space by Personal Productivity Club is for you. Co-working Space is a virtual work community designed to help members be more effective and efficient in their work and personal lives. At its core, we provide goal tracking and host focused action sessions throughout the week for accountability and camaraderie. Visit anythingbutidle.com/coworking to learn more. Co-working Space lives inside Personal Productivity Club, a digital community for personal productivity enthusiasts, so you can find people who use methods and tools you do too. Again, head over to anythingbutidle.com/coworking to see how Co-working Space can help you be more productive. And now, back to our show.
Welcome back, everybody, to Anything But Idle. I'm Ray Sidney Smith, joined with Augusto Pinaud and our guest Art Gelwicks to talk about the Google I/O conference, the Developer Conference 2021, our redux, our commentary on that. And so let's kick into the Material You. The announcement was that Google has redesigned a new design language, and they are calling it Material You. And it seems to be so much more than just a simple refresh of their material design concept, their material design language that they developed. What do you think about Material You?
I'm of mixed emotions with Material You. And here's why. I love the idea that they are opening up the ability to create a user environment that's much more of what I want. Because that's what you've always had on Android, is the ability to go through, you load a different launcher, you load a different application, and you can tune that. They're putting that into the operating system. That being said, and if you have an opportunity, go look up the design imagery and all. It looks very nice. I got to give them credit. It looks solid. I like the feel of it. I like the flow of it. Based on some of the improvements, it's supposed to reduce core system utilization by up to 22%. It's supposed to reduce the system server use on the big cores by up to 15%. Notifications are going to get cleaned up. But this isn't all that new. It's just new for Google. I mean, Motorola's done this in the past. Samsung has One UI. I mean, you've got all these different user interfaces. They're going to be pushing this on the Pixel phones first, but I don't know how much of a difference this will make across the other user interfaces. And I'll go from Samsung being my bailiwick as of late. One UI, some of this may transfer in, some may not, but a lot of this functionality is already in there. So while I think it's really nice, and I know they're going to make some nice improvements in like the motions and the animations and things like that, it's not a game changer type of thing. That said, it's also being carried down into Chrome, so yeah, it's a positive, no question about it.
I think that where I fall on this is it is a challenge, a direct challenge to the design aesthetic of Apple. Android has to date been really working, and I think that Android 11, even Android 9, made leaps and bounds toward having a cleaner, modern, slick interface. But the reality is that it still took a lot to customize the experience of the Android operating system, especially with the modern architecture. And my ongoing gripe with Apple is that they don't like giving up control over the experience. So they want it to look like Apple, and they want everything to look, if they could stop all customization to all Apple products and only have one user interface on the ecosystem, they would do it, right? And that makes a lot of sense for the Apple users. And it is not to say that Apple users are stupid or that they're incapable of doing complex things. It's not anything about that. It's the aesthetic, right? They want an empty room and a singular iPhone sitting in that room with white furniture, and all you see is that one device, right? Like that minimalist design aesthetic is absolutely an Apple thing. So I get it. But for the rest of us, right, that's a very luxury market, very small number of people on the planet. And for the rest of us, we want our products to become ours, right? Most people have a phone case. Most people want to be able to immediately customize. Like, honestly, I don't know what most phones people have when they're walking around the streets, because they have cases on them and they look completely the same. They just look like, flat rectangles holding a device. You don't necessarily know what devices people have today, and people like customizing that. They like it to be unique. And Material You, especially with some of the features they showed in Android 12, and we'll talk about some of those now, which is, the ability to do color extraction. In essence, the person who did that part of the keynote, I forget his name, but you in essence can take a photograph, and that photograph will identify a color palette from the photograph and then pull that into the design. I just think that's so smart and so competent of Google to start looking at different ways in which to quickly customize an experience for people in a way that personalizes. And I think just that fact is I think the reason Material You is going to go far.
It's a nice idea. Again, many of the launchers have done that, but I don't think this is targeted to an audience who loads a different launcher. I mean, if you're a Nova launcher or a Microsoft launcher or whatever user, this isn't shot at your direction. This is at the application level, because I don't care what launcher you have, it doesn't change what your applications look like. And this is a design standard that digs itself all the way down into those. But secondarily, it gives you that ability to have that customization without having to go and load a launcher. And
exactly.
You could dig out the stats, but it's not everybody who goes and loads them. And it's something that you have to maintain. You give up something to get something. Now, I will be very curious to see the major manufacturers, how they integrate this into their core systems. So like a Samsung, how do they incorporate Material You into One UI? Do they make that a transparent connection so that if you make Material You changes, you can see that reflected in your One UI interface? I think they're going to have to do that for those platforms to not run parallel to this. But I think this is a deeper piece, and I think you're hitting on some of the key things. We're talking about, the colors and the things like that. But I think there's more to that user experience. It's a deeper thing that Google's saying, look, we want more polish on this. We've always had good engineering tools. Now we want that user feel to be a little bit more premium. And again, targeting pixel is a good place to do it because pixel's one of those things that it just kind of works. There's a lot of tinkering. It's about as close to an Apple type of device as you're going to get. So I'm very anxious to see how this plays forward and how far out it plays. And as we talk about things like Wear OS later on, I think we'll see that this is going to keep popping its head up.
Yeah, so just on the heels of what you're talking about, in terms of launchers being installed, you're absolutely right. Most people are not launcher installers, and this brings a lot of those capabilities to the average user without having to muck with a separate launcher. And that also means that those features that people would typically say, oh, you need a launcher for, are going to go away. So that's I think that's going to increase the speed and efficiency of the operating system if it doesn't have to have more code to be able to do the same thing. So that's where I think a lot of those cost savings in compute power are going to come down. And just a note that widgets will be different. So while the software, the applications won't be changed, the way in which your widgets appear will. I mean, they're rounding edges around the widgets. All of those kinds of things are happening. And to your point about how quickly you can get access to it, if you have a Pixel, you can go in now into the Android 12 beta and actually start to see it. Just note that, it might have a few glitches here and there, but it should be fairly stable for most people to use. And, just be mindful of anything that you have running that, you're going to have to, if you leave the program, you're going to end up having to wipe the machine and go back to the prior version. So it's going to wipe out some of those preferences and other details. But some key points. This Android 12 is bringing Material U to Pixel in the fall. But as Google noted, Material U is coming to Chrome OS, to Google Chrome, to Wear OS, and to, I think I heard them say it right, to basically all our other Google products that are out there. This is remarkable to me. I mean, I think about the Chrome profile, which just came out recently. Now we have different profiles where we can have different user instances logged in. And sometimes, right before you're about to present a webinar, it freezes up on you, like it did this morning on me. But for the most part, I think Chrome profiles are an amazing addition to the Google Chrome ecosystem. And but the ways in which I'm one of the Google Chrome product experts, and I spend time in the Google Help community helping folks out with Google Chrome issues, and volunteering in that space, you see a lot of conversations about people wanting to customize their Chrome experience and the issues they come into play doing that. Material U, I think, is just an amazing potentiality here for us to be able to quickly and seamlessly go from Google Photos and say, hey, you know what? I want to take this photograph and now make this my theme, right? Think about, a parent takes a photograph of their children, clicks on it. It now becomes the profile theme for that particular Chrome instance. That's an amazing power that didn't require a lot of heavy lifting. So you go from 0 to 100 in just seconds. And hopefully now we can synchronize that. So now it just basically picks up on my Pixel 5 and then it picks up on my Chromebook. I mean, I would really like to have that kind of synchronization happen across the ecosystem if I want it. And we already see that with so many other Google services. Why not with its interface? So I'm looking forward to this in that sense.
Yeah, I think you brought up an excellent point about taking over functionality that's having to be done by third parties. This type of functionality, like this thematic approach, for example, Samsung has apps that'll do that, and you can do that. But if I'm a developer and I can pull out of the operating system to do that, that means I don't have to have more RAM chewed up to be able to provide this same functionality. So I can free that up and use it for something else, taking advantage of the power of my device. So there's no downside I can see to this. I'm very curious to see how it comes out and evolves. But your point about it spreading across devices, I think, is probably the most important thing. The less it gets in silos, the better off it is. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I agree with you. One of the things I appreciate about living on an iOS ecosystem is that it doesn't matter which device I grab. I can grab the iPad, I can grab the phone, I can grab anything, and it is exactly that same experience. And I think this is one step towards that direction, and that is incredibly powerful to being able to grab any device and in my case and have that exact same powerful experience. I don't need to choose, okay, what I'm going to do. Should I grab the big iPad or should I grab the little iPad? It doesn't matter. Both will be as capable of, and I think this will really make the Chromebook platform and the Android more powerful. Okay, what I want to grab. Do I want to grab my big Chromebook? Do I want to do it on the phone? Do I want to do it on the tablet?
But the difference there is Apple has chosen for you what that experience should be. What Chrome's allowing, or Google's allowing you to do, is to choose what that experience should be across the devices. And
Sure.
that's literally the two sides of the coin that we've always seen with these two. And I think that's a good thing. I know a lot of people who have their Android devices configured so they look like iOS devices. Same shape icons, color scheme, the whole 9 yards. I'm like, okay, go buy an Apple. But in those,
they probably got it for 30% less cost.
well,
Why?
there you go, because they got 4 devices for the price of one. No, did I say that? So it'll be very interesting to see where they go with this. I like the fact, and we did mention it briefly, that one of the things this is crossing into is the Wear OS space too.
Right.
So it'll be interesting.
And I agree with you on that. I think there is an important distinction to make.
Mhm.
That you said is true for certain level of tech level user going up, but that non-tech user who get the Android, okay, will not experience any of this. And now out of the box, they will get that consistent experience. And I think that's a change. And you are not the average user. So yes, you will think and to install, break, hack, all these things in good terms on your own devices. The average non-tech user who is buying this cheap Android, okay, and a cheap Chromebook don't have an idea how to do that. Now, out of the box, they will get the consistent experience. And I think that is critical.
And it raises, see, you're raising an interesting point, because when you think about, for example, Motorola was always touted as being as close to pure Android as you could get without being on a Pixel. So when you look at that type of player in this space, for example, if I'm going to bring out a Chrome OS tablet or an Android tablet, now do I bring it out with Android 12, knowing that it's going to have this customizable UI that I don't have to layer a skin on top of, that I don't have to take care of? Does this open up opportunities for me as a hardware manufacturer or as a software developer? Can I leverage this Material U interface design to say, okay, whatever they want it to look like, I know it's going to be fine because I'm following the spec, and I don't have to worry about designing this part of it. I can put it into the functionality and the reliability of the app. So
Yeah.
I will be very curious to hear what people think as they start to put this thing into use.
Yeah, so Google brought out Project Trouble to be able to get more people to update the Android operating system in faster speed. And now they say that roughly about 30% of Android devices are on the latest version. So that's pretty good. It could be better. Apple is way higher than that in their ability to get their older devices, legacy devices, upgraded to the latest versions before they sunset them from support. And so we want to see more of that, purely from my perspective, that if you have a later version of the operating system, more security holes are filled, and a more secure environment makes us all more secure. But you also get the features with it. So I think that we have to move in that direction as well, which is understanding that getting users and getting OEMs to both understand the importance and power of getting to the latest version is going to be important. I know we're running a little bit slim on time, so I want to talk a little bit about Wear OS before we close out. But I did want to mention that Google did give a nod. It's not just lip service to privacy here. Obviously, Apple is currently being billed as the most, kind of secure of the two operating systems. And the reality is that Google is out there working very hard to get Android into a position to push that message that they've created a new privacy dashboard. They also have the new private compute core. This is not a separate chip. This is actually a segregated space on the chip that gives you this very, very powerful layer of security. It's open source, so there's nothing being pulled over anybody's eyes in terms of being able to see. The transparency is there to be able to see what Private Compute Core does. And that means you have this segregated space as a developer to be able to put really secure stuff into that space and know that you're going to be able to utilize that information that you might be collecting about users and not make them feel totally creeped out that you're taking this information from them, because it is going into this secure space on the chip. Just a couple of other really quick items. The new TV remote feature that is coming to Android 12 is just wonderful. I love it. I want it, and I want it yesterday. Digital key, the digital car key, which is the name of the ability for you now to seamlessly unlock, lock, and start a vehicle. Right now, BMW is the only supported vehicle make, but they are hopefully going to bring this out to more car manufacturers very soon. And so I thought they announced, as you said earlier, Art, it was kind of like a fire hose of features coming out of Android 12. We will undoubtedly report about this once Android 12 actually comes into GA, general availability, and we're all using it. But just know that these things are on the horizon. Art, you were going to say?
Just wanted to say that the thing about the privacy thing, to me, this is, again, another case of this being table stakes now. They have to do this. Everyone who is in this space has to have this kind of offering. I'll go back to Samsung. Samsung has their Fort Knox solution on their devices for file storage and for secure access. Microsoft has their personal vault. Privacy has got to be the core consideration of these things. And if they didn't do this, this would be one of the big things I would be going, guys, what are you doing?
Yeah, so Google has just recently, we talked about this last week or the week before that, about the fact that they put two-step verification into people's accounts that could utilize the technology. They're really pushing the envelope here in terms of making sure that people are taking privacy and security seriously, and where they're not, they're trying to level those up for them in hopefully a as frictionless environment or friction free experience as possible. And I just really like it. I love the fact that now Android 12 is going to allow you to unlock your Chromebook from your phone. And so they're extending Smart Lock. I currently have Smart Lock attached to my Wear OS watch, and that allows me to unlock all kinds of things just by virtue of proximity to those devices. If I step away from it, it relocks, and therefore I don't have to worry about it. But the amount of time I spend around my Chrome devices is remarkable, and just to be able to be in its vicinity and never have to unlock these things because they're just open because they know I'm here. If my watch is not on me, my arm is severed. So somebody call law enforcement. So it's great that I have that capability of being able to connect my devices in such a way, and I'm looking forward to seeing more and more of Phone Hub as well as other parts of Chrome OS really tightly integrated in that security function. But talking about Wear OS, they announced, I think brilliantly, that they are working with Samsung to bring Wear OS back to life. I would have about a year and a half ago said, Wear OS was dead on arrival. There are lots of rumors about a Pixel Watch. I really, really still hope this fall we will see the launch of the Pixel Watch, but that's to be determined. And so they've decided to take Tizen and sunset Tizen for wearables, and Samsung is still going to keep Tizen running for Samsung TVs and for all of their other display products. But for Wear OS, they're going to sunset Tizen, and Samsung and Google are going to work together to make Wear OS better. And here's many things.
Here's where it gets neat. They will kill off Tizen as the operating system on Samsung watches. However, they're going to use One UI as the user interface. which to me makes sense because the Tizen-based One UI interface is a better interface than the Wear OS interface. And they're going to drop the OS part and they're just going to call it Wear. What I think is more interesting to this is the sub-story, which is the integration of Fitbit fitness technologies into this combination. And what we're going to see first is we're going to see Samsung watches come out running a 5 nanometer chipset in it that is going to be more energy efficient and it's going to be faster. It's going to run a Wear OS based operating system that's easier to develop for. It's going to run the One UI interface, which makes the watch easier to use. Matter of fact, the new one, they're even talking about it's still going to bring out the rotating bezel. Thank you. Because I don't like sliding bezels. I like my old school rotating bezel. But that combination then, once that gets established, we're going to start to see, and I'm going to call it now, we're going to see Fitbit devices start to come out in this combination. And this trio, I think, is going to reset this entire idea of the wearable space. If I were in Apple Watch land, I would be looking for a whiskey bottle at this point because they are going to make a play.
But that is really exciting, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, as a person who is on that place, okay, one of the problem is, and this is a problem of Apple, is they can continue developing, but if Apple is the kid that will only study for the test when he knows there is somebody who can get better grade at them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that was a typical kid on the classroom that didn't prepare for the test because he knew he can get an A and nobody else will. That's Apple MO. They are way ahead. The last two releases has been okay. Why? Because the distance with just doing okay is so abysmal with the competition that there is no need. So what I hope now with this, and this is the reason I was really excited about it, is this is going now to tell Apple, okay, now we are going to race it and race it again, and what you're going to do about that. And I think that's going to be really amazing.
I cannot mention enough how important I think this is, because it's difficult for Samsung to write applications for Tizen. There was a really interesting story that I found talking about this, and one of the reasons why some people are speculating that Samsung was willing to make this play is within the Korean market, there's an application called Kakao Chat. And Kakao Chat is very much like WeChat and WhatsApp and things like that. But in a country of 50 million people, it has 46 million users. Kakao Chat has said flat out they will not write a Tizen-based application. Well, that's a problem. If you want that wearable messaging capability on your device and the incredibly loyal Samsung users that are in that market space, you got to find a way to play it. And I think the timing couldn't have been better on this. I think Google and Samsung, when you look at all the other things they've been tying together, have really pulled these pieces together. I will be very interested to see if the linchpin of this whole thing doesn't become Samsung. And the reason why I say that is when you start to look at applications such as the Outlook application on Google or on Android that is supported on your smartwatch to be able to see email notifications, you can do that now and respond to notifications. You just wait till you can take a Teams call off of your watch or respond to a chat for a Teams session, and that pass-through capability. I think we're going to get closer to that because of this underlying commonality that we're starting to see. But I think the fitness one, the Fitbit factor in this is the X factor. I really think that's the X factor, because when you look at the high-end Fitbits and their capabilities, yeah, they do a lot, but they're not in the same space as a smartwatch. Now they can be. Now they can be plus. Now, for example, the new Samsung smartwatch that's going to come out, the 4, they've already taken out the OS or the oxygen sensor. They've, for some reason, and there's a couple of reasons why they did it, but they backed that tech out. But they're going to be able to bring that tech immediately right back to the 4 when they're ready. And whether they want to do that on a Samsung device or all these other ones that we haven't really talked about. And I don't know if you guys have seen anything or not. I haven't really seen anything about how does this work with legacy devices. So if you're like a Fossil makes a ton of Wear OS watches. There's a ton of like Michael Kors watches and that sort, and Tick and all those other ones. Are they going to be able to pick this up? Will this go back and retroactively upgrade? I'm keeping my fingers crossed too, Ray, because this is an old Wear frontier that just if this were made by Timex, I could use the old saying because it just keeps ticking. This is where, the legacy on these devices and the lifespan on these devices should be long. The hardware should fail before the operating system gives up. And up until this point, Samsung's been able to support that with Tizen. I've got a Wear OS Fossil in the drawer that I tried when this announcement came out, and I survived it for half a day. And then I put it back in the drawer because
So a couple things before we close out. One, I've had this Wear OS watch for many years now, and really the only thing lacking on it is the lack of updates. And so if it had the latest version of Wear on it, I think that it would be phenomenal for me. I am able to take and make phone calls directly from the watch and have a seamless conversation with it. It is tied to the phone, so it's not like I'm not without the phone, but I've locked myself out of the house a few times now, and I've been able to unlock it because I can just voice into Google to unlock the front door. And since we have a connected watch, it then will unlock the front door for me, or I can open up the garage by voice. So my watch is capable of giving me that capability that, I walk around without my phone sometimes, and then you lock yourself out. Now I need to do that for the roof deck. We've got to get one for the roof deck because I have locked myself on the roof now, and that is not a fun experience. So I thought to myself, well, I'll just ask neighbors to come in the garage or from the front door and come up and let me in to my own house.
Take this whole thing full circle though to when we started talking. Run Lambda through your watch. Have that conversation with that device on your wrist to get not only the information, but to make those dinner reservations or to, arrange for that pickup or whatever, get medical advice. That all these pieces start to tie together, then they start to make logical sense. Now, I don't want to get too hyped on this because it's still Google and it's still a watch and they still suck at that until they do better. But I'm hoping that the influence of Samsung's success in this will help them focus on the part that they could do well, which is the underlying operating system. So we'll see.
Now, I'm bullish. Yeah, I'm bullish and hopeful on this because Fitbit is serious. They have been serious about this for a long time. And Samsung is a player who's serious in this market. And Samsung is about making money here. And you noted something very important, which is the Kakao Talk application ecosystem is very important to Samsung, and they want to be able to appease to those folks. I do want to note before we close out just a couple things here. I think that there is a huge developer opportunity here, because the new experience on Wear is going to be that the apps can be installed from your phone as opposed to plunking around on the screen on your watch. And I think that's going to be just great. You see now apps inside of the Play Store, and now you can choose your watch to be that install device option. Just like you now in the Play Store on the desktop, you can select the device you want to install, Chromebook, Android, otherwise. You can now push the application to the device without having to go on the phone and find it. I think there's going to be a great app discovery opportunity here, and that's going to give developers more interest and in developing for the Wear platform. I'm really excited there. Continuous heart rate monitoring will hopefully come to the health and fitness experience because of Fitbit and the latest technologies that are underpinning Wear and how they're developing it here. Plus, Samsung has had it for a while, and those are things that weren't available on Wear because of the load on the system. You can install separate applications for that, but I think more and more of these kinds of things for being able to do blood pressure monitoring, that currently the latest Android version on Pixel is able to do respiration and all those kinds of blood heart rate monitoring from the camera, just touching your finger to the lens with the light. What do you call the light? The flash. The word was escaping me there. All of those pieces I think are going to be really great. And tiles are coming back in a better format. So you're going to get more tiles and swipeable. It's so,
But
so great.
they're also including a tiles API, which means
Yes.
developers will be able to develop their own. Yay. It's about time. Plus, we start to pull in the technologies such as the EKG capability and being able to have that functionality. There's a huge opportunity for this to finally get going in the right direction. I hope that Google gets out of their own way and they say, look, we'll write the underpinnings. You guys all figure out the hardware and you figure out all the other pieces, and we'll just drive it and make the apps work. That would be a win-win-win across the board in my book. I hope it happens. I really do. Because I need to upgrade my watch and I want a really good excuse. So.
I am definitely ready. I've been ready for a good year or more. All right. We have reached the top of our time. We have an announcement before we close out. Augusto, what's going on tomorrow? I think tomorrow.
It is tomorrow, actually. Yes. On the Personal Productivity Club, we have the second event of the comparison we're doing with Todoist and Remember the Milk. Dr. Frank Buck and myself are going to come and talk about how collaboration work and how that task collaboration happen in Remember the Milk as well as in Todoist.
So for those of you who are listening to the podcast this morning, that is this evening, May 25th. So at least Eastern time, it's 6 p.m. Eastern Daylight Saving Time. So make sure you know that if you're listening to the podcast right now, you should be getting it on your calendar because it'll be just in a few hours from the time in which you listen to it. With that, I just wanted to thank Art Gelwicks for joining us here on the show. Art, where can people keep up to date with the work you're doing out there in the world of productivity?
Best place, as always, come over and visit me at the Idea Pump. I've actually started a new section called 60-second productivity, which are the littlest tips I can find to get you a little bit more productive within 60 seconds. So come on, visit, give me ideas, things you want to know about. Just come talk to me. I'm lonely. So.
All right. Thanks so much, Art, for joining us as always.
My pleasure.
All right, Augusto, we are wrapping up. Thank you very much, Augusto Pinaud from Productivity Voice, for joining me here always for Anything But Idle.
It was always fun. That's always fun.
Wonderful. And with that, we have covered the Google I/O conference for 2021. We will be back next week, Monday, and we will catch up on the news we didn't cover in this past week. And then we will cover the rest of the news that we normally cover for the current week. And so if you are on anythingbutidle.com for this episode and there's something we missed about Google I/O that you really want to let us know about, or the world at large, feel free in the page, episode 61. So it's anythingbutidle.com/061. That'll take you over to this episode page. There in the show notes, there's a comment section below that. You can go ahead and leave comments. But also in the show notes, you'll find links to all the various Google I/O roundup links that we found and embedded there. And so you can find all of those. There's also a text transcript. And so you're able to click on that read more link. It'll expand it and you'll be able to read along while you watch or listen. And then, of course, there's a PDF link. You can click on that and download it. While you're there on anythingbutidle.com, you are able to follow or subscribe depending upon what application or ecosystem you're listening to us on. But you can go ahead and follow us in that way. You'll get the new podcast episode and it'll just show up for free when we release them each week. And and if you're watching the live stream, feel free to click the subscribe button, and that means that you'll get notified, hopefully, when we go live each week, and you can watch us live and comment along and enjoy the conversation with us as well. If you enjoy spending the time with us, feel free to click the thumbs up icon. That does help us, find new productivity friends. And so thank you for doing that. With that, we will see you all next time on Anything But Idle. Here's to your productive life.